On the 4th of November 1972, a British Army helicopter made the 12-mile journey from a jail in Belfast to an abandoned World War II US Air Force base in Long Cache. The only passenger was a senior loyalist paramilitary, Gusty Spence. He would spend the next 12 years here.
It was a dark, dismal, rainy Saturday night. Desolate place. There was a mass of wire, German razor wire, which is a vicious thing. Dogs, searchlights, army in control. What else would you call it except a prisoner of war camp? That's what it was.
This is the story of the Maze, a prison like no other. 29 prison officers were killed here, and 10 men starved themselves to death. The prison was built to contain the men who created the Troubles, the violent conflict between the Republicans, Catholics who wanted Northern Ireland to join the Irish Republic, and the Loyalists, Protestants loyal to Britain. It became the very center of the struggle, and finally a key to unlocking the fragile peace process. Now lying empty, these prison cells held the gunmen responsible for 30 years of bloody history. In the early 1970s, Northern Ireland was in turmoil. There was open violence on the streets. The Conservative government in London had introduced imprisonment without trial to combat unrest.
There was a real battlefield going on here. And when I think back now, it frightens the life out of me, what went on then.
At that stage, I mean, as far as I was concerned, if they can plant a bomb in the Shankill and kill 4 people, I was prepared to plant a bomb in the Falls and kill 8.
Convictions for terrorist offences were growing. Among those arrested was the IRA, the Irish Republican Army leader in Belfast, Brendan Hughes. Hughes had been on the run for 3 years. He was flown to the Maze with another leading Republican, Gerry Adams.
Obviously, it was big news when people like myself and Gerry Adams was arrested, because the media had built up this whole image about me and Gerry. So when they flew us in, all these people were on the roofs with loyalist flags, unionist flags, Union Jacks, cheering the fact that we were imprisoned.
Hughes was a member of the Provisional IRA. He was caught with explosives and sentenced to 15 years.
When I got to prison, I felt a great sense of relief. At least I was alive. My war for that period was over.
The prison opened in 1971 when the Long Cache Air Base was hurriedly converted. In 1972, it was renamed the Maze. Prisoners were granted special category status in recognition of the political motivation behind their crimes. This was to have untold consequences for the prison and for the conflict as a whole. Inmates were not required to work or wear a prison uniform. They ran their own lives behind the wire. They saw themselves as prisoners of war, not criminals. This secret footage, smuggled out by the Protestants, portrays the prisoners as disciplined POWs. Commander of the Loyalist prisoners was Gusty Spence.
There had to be some form of regime which respected the rights of everyone. And that regime was discipline. It was a British Army discipline.
Gusty Spence, Ulster Volunteer Force, was sentenced to life for a sectarian murder.
Everybody was terrified of Gusty. His reputation was that of a military person. I mean, you had to stand to attention, call him sir. Gusty looked at it in terms of us being young men that had volunteered as soldiers and treated as soldiers.
8 o'clock in the morning, it would have been Reveille. After Reveille, it was either a 3 or 5 mile run, depending on the weather. Following that, it would have been showers and muster parade at 10 o'clock. Muster parade every morning, except Sunday.
Be brave, my darling, don't give up the fight, and think of all the...
A relatively ordered life inside the prison was in sharp contrast to the chaos engulfing much of Northern Ireland. In 1972 alone, there was Bloody Sunday in Derry, an IRA bombing campaign in central Belfast, sectarian attacks and street riots. 496 people were killed.
On the streets, we were killing each other. But once we were in the prison, there was a common adversary.
There was also a common goal: escape.
The most important person in the cage was the escapes officer. And if you come up with an idea, you had to go to the committee. Just think of Colditz. We had the same structure. It's one thing we had to thank the British for. How do you escape?
Well, we have found a considerable number of tools of various natures, which one could certainly say were not going to be used for hobby making or making models of any kind.
I understand you found 2 small tunnels as well.
Yes. I wouldn't say tunnels, no, 2 holes. One was an actual hole, and one was the start of a hole only.
There's all sorts of underground tunnels and so forth. We were constantly digging tunnels, constantly.
Tunnels are very, very dangerous things. And whenever these tunnels were being built, the water seeped in. And I remember a fellow coming to me at 2 o'clock in the morning, and sir, he says, there's very strange noises down this tunnel. He says, it's probably water. Made a bit of rat, I don't know. So I went down anyhow, and you had to go down in your underclothes. And sure enough, there was strange noises. The Provos had lost their way from compound 16, I think it was, and they were digging in the old tunnel, so get away the hell at me, you know. So they were a wee bit red-faced, perhaps maybe the next day. They'd lost their direction.
The leaders of the rival paramilitary groups declared a truce, or a no-conflict policy. A dialogue had begun.
On tuck shop days, maybe some provisional area had run short of sugar or whatever. If it was our particular day to shop, we would have bought extra sugar and thrown it across to them. Then, whenever they shopped, they would have returned the gesture. Those type of things.
Prisoners helped each other communicate between compounds.
This is a rather ingenious tennis ball which the prisoners used as a means of communication. They were obviously keen to get information passed as quickly as possible from one compound to another. And I mean, it didn't matter if there was a loyalist compound passing it to a loyalist and they had to go through a Republican compound, the Republicans would have picked up the ball and thrown it on into the next loyalist compound.
Inmates on both sides organised seminars on politics and Irish history. For many, it was the first time they had explored the causes of the conflict.
My first question whenever a volunteer came in, why are you here?
Why are you here? You know, and it was the standard question that everybody was afraid of.
And it was always the same answer, you know.
The standard reaction, of course, was because it was caught. You know, why? What do you mean?
Oh, no. That's the reason why you're here. But why are you here? Why are you fighting this war?
Republican and Loyalist leaders even formed a camp council to discuss common grievances.
I remember Gusty, who was OC of the Loyalist prisoners at that time, and Billy McKee, who was OC of the Republicans at that time, having discussions. And he's talking to Gusty Spence, right? And that was the doors beginning to open.
We seen Long Case, and it was a microcosm of Northern Ireland. You had your particular ghettos. The leaders of those groups came together to legislate as a whole. I believe that that was the first step in an embryonic peace process.
But this dialogue was not destined to last. In 1974, after alleged brutality by prison officers, the Republicans set fire to their compounds. From the wreckage arose a new prison and a new regime. In it, there would be no room for political dialogue between enemies. The old compounds, with their echoes of a prisoner of war camp, were swept away. From now on, prisoners would be locked in conventional cells in 12 blocks, each built in the shape of the letter H.